a tactical 40K. So this weekend there's lots of stuff going on, but I was able to take my list that I've been building with Ravenguard and play two games. One against World Eaters, and then the next day against Orks, which I've struggled with. Kind of similar fighting styles, I'd say, the World Eaters and the Orks. Very fast moving and heavy melee, but the Orcs have some shooting as well. But anyway, I'll go into the list a little bit, and then maybe a little bit later, but we'll go over the games first. One, the World Eaters, which is a very tight game. I won by 1 point. I probably would have won by a greater amount, but I decided to take a gambit in turn 3. And because when I got to that point, I was like, man, it doesn't look good, the board state for me. And we'll get into what I learned from that game. Board state, when it comes to units, I lost quite a few assets in the beginning, just because, man, he's a beast. And but what ended up happening is I ended up tying him up enough that I screened him out enough, I tied him up enough. But the other unique thing about his list, no Angron, which I thought this gentleman actually played better without Angron with his list than he did with him. I think sometimes World Eaters get so wrapped around him, Angron, that they don't play as well with the rest of their list. But anyway, so we go. So I don't even know what was going on with that. Anyway, my list, I have enough tools in it that I built in that it doesn't matter. But what this game has taught me, with a 1 point victory, and it would have probably been more just looking at it after turn 3 and 4. I ended up scoring, because when you gambit, you can still score secondaries. I ended up scoring enough, had a really big secondary turn, so I ended up winning without the gambit. But you have the gambit that I had, we'll just go into that. Orbital strikes, I believe it was, and so you get as many units you can in the corners. So bam, 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 I'm doing that. I had like 5 or 6 units. I think I forgot to play one of the units, but whatever. So then you roll 2d6 at the end, and if you get more than 12 or more, you get 30 victory points. So I mean, it's good. It's not bad. I was there. I missed it by like 1, so I won by 1, but I missed the gambit by 1. But if I wouldn't have played the gambit, I would have scored a number of points on primary as well. I'd have probably extended that lead to another at least 10 to 15. But it is what it is. I tried it. But my list, especially we're Dawn of War deployment, so the hot dog. And I guess it'll make a lot more sense when you see the list. But I have assets literally across the entire thing. I have like mirror assets is what I'll call them. So in particular in the very corners, I have people's stage there just in case I draw like an investigate signals or something like that. They're also there so the enemy sees them, but they're lone ops and they sit over in these corners, right? And then I have staged other units for where I want to go on the board with some of these other assets. I also have my deep strike units, and they are literally 4 units. And then I have my blade driven deep from Vanguard, the enhancement. I have that unit and another infiltrating unit up there. So in this particular instance, having a scout squad, as everybody talks about how good they are still good. 65 points. They are good, a pivotal part of being able to play against an orc army or play against a World Eaters army. Not that they fire or do anything really crazy destructively, but the fact that there's something you have to deal with. They screen out units, and they increase survivability. If that saves you like a turn with a unit, they're worth their weight in points. But I don't want to get too deep into that until we get past this other game. So yeah, screening unit, presence unit in your what I call your primary mission, your main objective right there, and then some feinting units or things that I need the enemy to see. Then I have tanks and indirect fire, and I have lines of fire with my tanks, how I deploy them. But anyway, so obviously World Eaters come at you hard. He also had some rhinos in there. They comes at me. comes at me fairly hard, takes some objectives. That's why I said the board state with World Eaters is a little bit different because they come at you so hard and fast. Even if you can screen them out, unless you have enough scout units. But I don't want to take a bunch, like 3. I want to just take my 1. I mean, I could see maybe 2, but then it eats into the other tools that I need. But he comes at you hard, and then I just tie him up with one of my other units, and I was able to, score some good secondaries. And like I said, at the end, it was really big because I scored the secondaries, um, and I was actually trying to get to my corners to get orbital. Anyway, let's get out of that one because the orcs one is actually really good because what happens, orcs, they come at you hard too. They have units that can auto advance like 18. They have the wall, which allows them to like advance and charge, and then they have things that can give them extra charge, just like the World Eaters can get like an additional 2. They have all kinds of little things, and there's whole units like with power claws. There's all kinds of things. They don't shoot particularly, like they don't have a good ballistic skill, but they do shoot. But their thing is moving quick, fast, getting in there, and they mop up. So I did a similar strategy, deployed literally almost virtually identically. Besides, the layout was different, the terrain layout, but the principle of my deployment, because it just happened to be the same Dawn of War thing, but the layout was different. And I probably have a picture of that. I might put that in the thumbnail, but or it was later in the game when I took the picture. But my deployment is the same as when I played the World Eaters, screened, board presence in the center, my 2 lone ops in the corners, just in case I can investigate signals, and to show the enemy that I have something back there that might be significant. Tanks drawing lines of fire or having firing lanes. If you ever been in the military, you draw that little map and you have your firing lanes and your dead spaces and all that other jazz that are listed out. So I kind of did that with my tanks. I have my indirect fire, and then my indirect fire multiplier, which that's what I call him. He's my TAC Marine, and a few other little assets that I have running around. And then my deep strikes, my tools in the box that I can utilize. This list also had a psyker. So I take the Calyxus. I'm going into my list a little bit. I'm starting to take the Calyxus at the Caladius. And I know the Caladius I could tax, because he has that hard as nails things. I could tax that. That would have been a good deal. But my points value right now, I just took the Calyxus because I was like, he is a tool in the toolbox I'd like to take everywhere. And any army that has a psyker in it, this guy I can drop in, bam, takes him out. And he had having a weird boy, and I just had some unfortunate rolls, but I was able to do that. And so I can't remember what round. Drop him in, get that line of sight. Outside of, I'm like 24 inches away, so I'm lone op still. Bam, shoot him, put some wounds on him, but I had some unfortunate rolls. And when this guy gets attacked by a psyker, he gets crazy good. When this guy attacks a psyker, he gets crazy good. And then he's got deep strike, stealth, move 7, assault, so he can run around and do things too. And he's 5 points cheaper than the Caladius. And with Vanguard Spirit, if you really wanted the Vect, I guess you could get it. You could put her in there, or you can put it on a Phobos unit. But anyway, so that one was almost similar. Like, I didn't like the board state with him really rushing in on me. But what I did there is I just made some key moves. I played my deep strikers very well, or not my deep strikers, my reserve and deep strikers very well. I realized from the World Eaters game that, the first couple of rounds in an army like this, it's not going to look good, and don't panic. And you have to be able to lose units. You need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and losing certain units. But it happened that way. I did lose those number of units. I got 1 unit down, my Blade Guard vet's down to 1, and he was key in this game. But I moved around the board. I hit the secondaries I needed to hit. I got my characters on objectives for sites of power, and I held objectives that I needed to hold. And I made one, like, there's 2 key moves in this game, and that one was I literally box card a charge that kept him off one of the objectives. I'd have still held it probably, but it just made it that much greater. With my aggressor brick, because the aggressor brick's a shooting element for the most part, and I want to keep it out of harm's way and ice other units. But then at a certain point, sometimes they have to go in and use their twin link power fist and get things done. And that was one of those times where I was like, I could probably still take him off with my reserve element, take him off that objective, but then I might not score the 5 points the next round, or whatever. There might be some kind of delay in that. It just wasn't. I need to put these guys up there. So if I can get them up there and screen him out and hold him off just for a little bit, it'll save me some time. So I did that. Somehow I got that charge. It was the best roll I've ever had. Also another calculated feint at the very end of the game. Granted, where when he conceded, and then we talked out some of the points. He knows about calculated feint. I've told him, but then when I told him, I had 2 units. I had an Scepter squad in his backfield on his objective, and then I had Intercessor squad on the center objective with my 1 solo Blade Guard vet and then my Caladius assassin. So I told him I'm going to use calculated feint, and I sat there and thought about it. I was like, it was either going to be on the Inceptors in the backfield, or it was going to be the guys in the center objective, which also had that deadly prize. But so I told him, I'm going to not use it on the Inceptors. Go ahead and charge those. I'm going to use it on the Intercessors that are right here. So he charged those, and then he goes down. He tries to dual charge the Intercessors and the Calyxus, I think, in order, because they have a lot of OC. So what I did is I calculated, feinted the Intercessor squad, and I rolled a 5 or whatever, and I was able to get where I was right at 12. And the Calyxus was right here. So he'd have to, and then the Blade Guard's in the middle, and it'll be in the video. So he has to get around the Blade Guard vet and make a legal charge over there, and also charge this guy. He declared it, and we sat there. He wanted to look up the rules on this thing. So I was like, as long as it's still eligible charge, you're gonna have to do this, and you can't be, obviously, the Blade Guard veteran as precarious as well. So he failed that charge, and that kind of sealed the deal for him either way. I mean, I ended up, that was a significant amount of points. I'd probably still won regardless, but those are 2 key elements of the game. Now, I'm debating on whether, because we're already 12 minutes in, I guess I'll go into the list, and then I'll do a whole nother list breakdown of what it does. But my list consists of, now, Cave and Shrike, of course. He's my lone op. I run him alone. That's how I've been running him. I put him in one of my corners, and he does rush in. I use him. I'm not afraid to lose him. Like, I use him to score, but then sometimes when somebody comes down, I go pile him in. I did that. I threw him on my left side objective before my, excuse me, right before I put my aggressors into these guys. And he did all right. Granted, he's not, like, super good against a lot of tough units, but he did his job, sacrificed himself for the chapter. But you can't be afraid to lose him. But he sits there. He can bounce around the board if I need him. I also put a Grav as captain, and I can change this one out. This is one of the units that I'm debating on whether trying something different, changing him out. But like with the World Eaters, he was able to tie up a Rhino for like the whole game. Couldn't move it. And even though it, disembarked his people, but the Rhino couldn't do anything else. It was just like sitting over there in this corner. He tied it up. There was nothing. It was just a useless object, essentially. And but anyway, so he's sitting in the other corner with Ghost Weave Cloak, ready to go score. I got my indirect fire placed usually wherever the hardest way to get a firing lane against it with the Tech Marine. It gives it Adept to the Omnicide, so I get the +1 to hit. I have an Intercessor squad that's usually sitting on the back objective, so I can sticky it. I might keep them to keep a Deep Striker out, depending on what the other armies consist of. Or I might run them at Assault like I did in the Orks game once I knew what his Deep Strikers were doing. Jump them up the board, go put a bunch of OC somewhere else, even if the objective's sticky, but just seeing where the elements are coming in, I can run them around and do things. And take a few pop shots, and it actually helped out, the pop shots. I also have, along with that, a brick of 6 Blade Guard vets with a Judiciary attach them to give him fights first. I give him the Blade Driven Deep. We throw them up the board. I have a Scout squad that's usually deployed ahead of them, and then that way you infiltrate them, and then you can either pull them back if you need to, but more than likely you're going to spread them out and screen the area, screen that center objective from an enemy, so they have to deal with them before they can get the Blade Guard vets. That saves you a turn, essentially. And then you can position them so maybe they can only take a few pop shots at your Blade Guard vets at best. but you just want to have that presence on that objective if you can. In the first turn, you don't necessarily need to be on the objective unless you want to sticky it with deadly prize or something, but you need to be right there so you can take it. But you also want to screen them. So the other thing is we got the Caluxus Assassin. Talked about him already. We got two. So I'm splitting a lot of my squads into smaller squads. So we got two small 3-man Inceptor squads. We have two 3-man Eradicator squads. Those are always in reserve for me for the most part. My Eradicator squads are my dedicated monster vehicle hunters. I can put them on the board. I've rapid ingress them the one time so that I can get them in a good firing lane when I need to, but not be in a firing lane to be targeted. I've put them in just various places on the board to get those lines of fire and just put as much melt as I can into whatever target that I need to. It helped me out in the Orcs game in particular. My Inceptors in small squads is good. I can put them in different places. I did that game as well, and really interrupted what he wanted to do by putting those Inceptors in certain things, by taking out his Gretchen, by putting him on his objective, forcing him to deal with them, putting him in the corners for investigate signals. When you lost strike and the other guy, excuse me. Then I also have two gladiator tanks, and I place them in the back. They have 72-inch guns. I'm placing them in. I got my lanes of fire. If I have to, I can double them up to really take something out, or I can split fire them, or not split fire them. They can each fire independently at their own targets. They also block out some center objective charges a little bit. Then if I need to, I can push them up the board, press the objectives a little bit, and then I have them with frags instead of like the bolters, so we can blast small enemy chaff units if we need to. And then what else do I have? There's something else that I had. I think that's it. My Tech Marine, that's my whole list that I can think of. Is there anything else? No, there's the units that I'm thinking about changing around though. So like I said, my Gravis Captain. Oh, you got the Biologist with the aggressors. My 6-brick aggressors, Biologist. I start them on the board sometime, or most of the time. That way, if you get that bottom turn, you might be able to pick them up and put them somewhere else. Granted, you're not running Ultramarines, you can't give them deep strike, so that you still got to put them on the board, but you still get to move them around a little bit, so it's not bad. But that's a way to make an effective Ravenguard list, in my opinion, is have it like this. It's combined arms warfare. You got indirect fire. You got big tanks to take anti-tank stuff. You got maneuver elements. You've got lone ops. You got, which are my scoring elements, but they can also tie things up. You've got firepower against infantry. You've got anti-monster and whatnot that can come on sides of the board. You have board control elements in people that are like pretty much assassins and scepters. Yeah, it's pretty good. The other part of it is just being tactical about it, having an objective, having a mission, and playing the units, not being afraid to lose them. No, like I said, I wanted to experiment on taking my Gravis Captain and maybe not the Caluxus, or maybe the Tech Marine out, and maybe replacing them with, like, let's say a brick of Centurion Assault or whatever those are, so the Assault Centurions, which they're like 150, but having them in the corner maybe. Or maybe my other thought was like a librarian and some eliminators, and you can always pick them up. You can pick either one of those, but have them over there and they can take pop shots. And then they've got the lone op, and then they can move around. And then, there's just a couple of different things. I think the main thing about that unit that I have with the Gravis Cap is its ability to tie things up, its ability to score back there, its ability to maneuver around. It's not necessarily there to do anything great, but the Gravis Captain guy I'm still happy with. He just can't even put pop shots on anybody right now. He just ties them up. He halves damage. He's, whatever. But if I could have something there, maybe he will throw a few shots over here. You have to kind of deal with it. It's over here in the corner. It can score, it might be worth it. But anyway, we might go in depth a little bit more in the tactics I'm using, how I'm using this list. But right now it's 2-0. We're going to take it, hopefully, maybe this weekend again. Maybe I'm going to take it into maybe like a Necron list, more shooty army. we'll see how it does. But against like a World Eaters Orks, those I'm happy with it. In Vanguard, I can move it around. I can score while they're busy dealing with other things. But anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.